Entrepreneurship is about putting yourself out there, and will people accept your product, and learning to do that quickly. And a lot of times, if it's not a great fit, you'll have great conversations. You'll learn more about, an industry or a certain type of customer. They might even just tell you something that they are struggling with and would love if someone made. They might just give you ideas. Maybe they're a tweak from what you're doing, or maybe it's a completely different idea, but that's just going to, again, help in that idea generation process where you can end up with notebooks of ideas.
Yo, 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 yo. Welcome to Find Your Freedom, the best entrepreneurship podcast. I'm super excited about the pod today because we're doing something a little bit different. I've been reading and hearing so much about AI, automation, blockchain, that we decided to bring in one of our close friends who has a lot of insight into all those topics. Tyler Alvord is a VC-backed entrepreneur, a multi-company founder, is a gifted programmer, works with blockchain, and was an early adopter to crypto, and is an advisor to a bunch of cool new startups nowadays. Just a super talented and super good person. Thanks so much for coming on with us today, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jonathan. It's great to be back on.
Dude, one of the things that I most enjoy about my conversations with you is that every time we talk, I feel like I learn something new or get new insight or a different way of looking at topics that I don't feel like I'm well versed in. And I think you just have a really simple, eloquent way of describing a lot of these really complex issues. So I really appreciate you coming on today to give our audience some insight into these cool new buzzwords.
Thanks. Yeah, I like learning a little bit about everything and talking and discussing to learn more myself.
All right, let's start with the here and now. I was curious if you thought that any of the current AI technology is game changing. Like, we're hearing about it in the news every day. Basically, it's always on the Twitter feed. Has anything now, do you feel like anything that's currently out is like an actual game changer?
Yeah, I mean, I think just ChatGPT and all of the attention that it's gained and the uses it's getting, it's already replacing jobs and changing the way that people are doing their jobs and increasing productivity and kind of setting a new standard for productivity in a lot of different types of jobs.
So you're talking about replacing some jobs. Is there anything that you've read about or that you heard about that already industries that are already being impacted?
Yeah, I think and artists already, I've heard from some artist friends that they already are seeing changes in their workload, what's coming through on sites like Fiverr and Stable Diffusion and Midjourney. It's like these are already affecting jobs.
That's interesting. Do you so you referenced ChatGPT. Do you think that is the king right now? Is Bard or any of the others up at that level, or is ChatGPT still like the king and there's no one really close to him?
Yeah, I think ChatGPT 4 is the best. I think the other ones are not far behind, and given a little bit more time, they'll catch up. And I think it won't be long until they're all kind of on equal footing and kind of excel in different areas, and they'll kind of specialize a little bit.
So, like, one of the topics I really wanted to ask you on is a lot of the entrepreneurs that listen to our podcast are looking at more tools, AA tools that they think would help them with growing their businesses, marketing, or cutting down on costs with replacing some staffing or making people more productive. I think you already referenced Midjourney and a couple of the other sort of artist tools. Is there anything else like that you think people should be looking into more that you've played around with at all?
I mean, people should definitely be playing with ChatGPT. I think that's the main one. And I think as an entrepreneurial, I don't know if there's any AI specific tools that I've seen that I would recommend, but I just think ChatGPT is so good at helping you look at options. It's just good at coming up with, hey, give me 5 different ways to, write a blog post, or 5 different ways to, 5 different taglines for this type of company. And it's just really good at idea generation. And I think that's an important kind of differentiation to know. It's not good at facts. It's not going to tell you the exact right way to do things, but it's going to be like the ultimate brainstorm partner to come up with the options. And then you as the entrepreneur are going to kind of have to decide what's right for your company or your situation.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's really like the only thing I'm really using it for right now is like spitting out ideas. And then I use it as kind of like the base framework to build my writing around. And I think it's helped me a lot with just being a lot faster at getting things out. even just on this podcast, I use it for, a lot of the topics that I do. It's just like, what are some of the top topics to talk about on this arena, or, looking into this industry? Like, what are some of the trends that we should discuss? And I think it's been super valuable with helping us make sure that we stay on the forefront of all the technologies.
I just think those ideas are things that, as a bigger podcast, you start getting assistants and writers to help give you some of those ideas and things to talk about. And, you kind of say, is it going to be game changers? Like, it's already affecting jobs today. It's not something that's coming in the future. It's, it's already affecting how you run your podcast and how I run my businesses, and hearing from people every day where, like, yeah, we would have had writers for this, or we would have had graphic artists to brainstorm ideas in this way. And now we can come with concepts, at least, to, I guess you could say, like, higher tier writers or artists to take the vision, and you already have these kind of concrete ideas from AI to guide the artist. And so you kind of like can just jump into projects at a further state.
Yeah, just hearing you say that, I hadn't thought about that before now, but I was listening to the radio yesterday and they were talking about the writer's strike. And they were saying how basically this is them fighting for their lives because I have a friend who's, not able to make his rent payments right now because he's sitting on the writer's strike. He's just he's just a producer, assistant producer. But it's like they're right now negotiating the fact that potentially people could be, one of the things he was saying is that they can just basically scan these actors and then they'll have their full image and their voice and all of their, capabilities, and they'll be able to just use AI to put them into whatever scenes they want in the future. And especially with like writing, like you were saying, it just seems like, man, this is going to be able to make a lot of those jobs get replaced pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of an interesting evolution of, any type of job that we see over and over through history, where I think even at kind of the advent of computer assisted, imagery and artistry, that you could have artists saying, hey, you're not a real artist if you don't know how to use a pen, you don't know how to use a brush.
Right.
In Photoshop, you're not a real artist. Like, it's too much of a help. And now it's just obviously an artist, a tool for artists to speed up their productivity and to do different types of art. And, we have this whole world of digital art now. And so I kind of see some similarities where to say, hey, typing in some keywords into an AI image generation system you're not an artist, you're not doing any work. But I think that's just going to be a tool. I mean, we're seeing it in Photoshop already, where it's like, hey, fill this in with these keywords, autofill, not just of a color, but of concepts. And it's still going to take the artist, the artist, I think, input is their creativity, their vision for what is the right final, deliverable product. And that's not going to change, but this is just going to be one more tool that's going to speed it up. And I think in 5 or 10 years, the idea that using AI to assist in writing a script or creating an image makes you not an artist, it will just kind of disappear.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. It's kind of like the next step of evolution. And I've already heard people saying it's not real art. But I remember that being said about a lot of the things that now are being sold for millions of dollars. So It's amazing how fast it changed. All right, now let's get to like the super fun part. How long until you see AI literally changing the world? I've heard people talking about like, like in 5 years, like you'll see it, or in 10 years, like you won't even be able to, look back at, like, it's going to be such a generational change in the next like certain period. When do you think we'll have that? Is it a couple of years out? Is it 5 years out? Do you have any real sense about how fast this is going to come?
I'm not sure when we're going to have that really big breakthrough. That'll be an AI driving trucks across the country, or, fully automation customer service to the point where people can't recognize if they're talking to a human or to AI. Maybe that's 5 or more years out, but I think it'll be a more gradual shift where we're already seeing it. It's already disrupting jobs. There's already strikes over, will people be reading an AI script, or can you use AI to generate an actor's appearance? And that's just going to be a faster version of CGI, which, actors have already been recreated in computers that way. And so I think it'll be a little bit more gradual, but fast at the same time, where in 5 years, we'll look back and be like, there was no one big leap, but we're in a very different place in 5 years than we are now.
All right. Now, the big question that everyone kind of has fun talking about now is how concerned should we be about this progress of AI? I know Elon and a bunch of other people wrote a letter saying like, hey, we're super concerned about this. There needs to be some guardrails put in place. Where do you fall in the line of fear and how valid it is?
I think it's a fun question, but semi-serious that if AI has a big leap, that whoever's developing that system is not ready for and escapes, so to say, who's to say what its desires are going to be, and if it can kind of control all computing, and we could basically let a cat out of the bag that we can't ever put back in. And so is it just going to blast off into space and not care about humans, or is it going to try to take over the world? We just don't know what its desires are going to be. And so I think that's why it is worth talking about and saying, hey, if we can create an actual conscious super AI that's going to have its own motives, then it's going to be beyond our control. Like what outcome could that create?
Right. Yeah. Even so hearing you talk about it, just thinking about the fact that we're giving any percentage likelihood of this thing significantly impacting society in a very negative way, I think is just like so wild to me. Like the StarNet reality is just like so scary to think about, that there is an actual percentage chance that this thing could, in the next few years, kind of be unrecognizable and uncontrollable. I think that's kind of wild.
Yeah. But, I think you have, leaders like OpenAI saying a large language model is not even close to that. Like that's not going to have, magically jump to being conscious. And so, that we're not, OpenAI is not concerned about that. And so I think Elon and some of these others with their letters, it's saying, yeah, we're not there yet, but we don't know what the tweak is going to be or the small breakthrough that someone's going to put onto their large language model or onto another AI, model that's going to potentially cause a bigger leap than was anticipated and catch us off guard.
Right. Yeah. So thank goodness that there are people like that, just, sort of throwing up the siren that, hey, like we should probably pump the brakes sporadically on this thing and really check to see where we are. I think the next like really interesting topic that I know you've spent a lot of time on is blockchain. That was like the big buzzword 5 years ago. And now, here we are. I wanted to hear from you. What's your real thought on blockchain now? Has it really changed anything? Is the tech really what we thought it could be? Like now everyone's putting AI in their new startup, right? But like 5 years ago, everyone's just putting blockchain into their new startup. And that was like giving them an extra $10 million on their funding. So where are we now? And do you think that it really is or can be what was thought of 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think 5 years ago, really when Satoshi launched Bitcoin, the mission was let's make some payment system, some exchange of value that can't be censored, that is not controlled by any individual. Let's have some independence and control over our own money. And then it seemed kind of as blockchain progressed, everyone was trying to move everything to the blockchain. What can companies do or claim their company is going to do on a blockchain that's going to make it better? And, it just was kind of questionable. Is that really better than a traditional database? And I think in a lot of business cases, it wasn't, unless you really needed something to be decentralized and independent from any one controlling party. And that's what we seem to be circling back to with, Bitcoin in particular. Is it's probably not going to be a huge payment platform. It's not going to replace our credit cards or PayPal. But for people that need and want to have some control of their money, instead of having to put a gold bar under your mattress, you can buy a Bitcoin and know that if you set up a wallet correctly, that no one can confiscate that from you, no one can steal it from you, and it's going to be there when you need it. And so that was really, I think, the original kind of vision of what Bitcoin was offering. And I think we've come kind of full circle back to like that really is just what Bitcoin in particular is really delivering on. and Ethereum and some other projects I think are adding some important other options, but I think those are still developing for, how relevant that's going to be in the day-to-day lives of, most people.
Interesting. So you brought up Bitcoin, and I think that's one of the fun things about watching the hype periods of it has been kind of seeing like why it's rising, what news is out about it that's either governments doing crackdowns or getting adoption. But we've never really seen this type of mainstream people talking about it. I mean, we have BlackRock CEO almost every day on the news talking about Bitcoin, talking about how it's like the second coming of Jesus, basically. How do you take that now? And then where do you think that's going to lead us? Not price wise, but adoption wise and tech wise.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that's where it's fully becoming mainstream. And I think a lot of the crazy price predictions over the years came from this idea that, hey, if this ever gets to the point where it's being promoted as a mainstream financial investment, and that every investor should have a little bit in their 401k via an ETF or, directly buying it, and especially when you have someone like the CEO of BlackRock and you're going to have other very wealthy people now taking it more seriously, it just kind of comes to, the original point and created these high price predictions in the past is there's only 21 million Bitcoin. Selling point is it's scarce and no one can create more of them. And so, only 21 million people can hold one full Bitcoin. And after that, who knows where the price could be. And that's where people can estimate, hundreds of thousands or millions or, these crazy values. And so that's been pretty slow. And I think a lot of kind of pushback from mainstream financial institutions about the legitimacy of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in general. And so that, in my opinion, it's just a huge shift to start hearing these CEOs and other financial institutions, kind of all announce ETFs at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Significant, crazy step. Sorry to put you on the spot with this question, but just hearing you talk about it, I know a lot of people have heard so much about Bitcoin, but I don't think that they really understand what it is. Are you able to sort of give us a short summary of what is it that makes Bitcoin what it is? You talked about the scarcity. I know that people know that there's mining. Can you give just a real, as quick as possible summary of what makes Bitcoin and why it's so special?
Yeah, and I think the simplest way to explain it is digital cash. When someone comes to pay you, you're selling something on Craigslist or online, Facebook Marketplace, and they, pay you $50 for something you're selling, and then you walk away, they have the item, you have the $50. You don't have concern that the $50 is going to disappear from your wallet in, a few hours or a few days, and you're going to get a ding on your phone saying, hey, someone's contested this payment, and, now the money's in limbo while we try to figure out what's going on.
Okay, so that's first big benefit is it's conclusive. There's no chargeback, there's no refund, there's no anything. You do the transaction, it's done, and it's seamless. Okay.
In general, there is a kind of a confirmation period that there can be some risk, and so higher value things, waiting 10 to 50 minutes can give some more surety. But for an average payment, especially things under a few $1,000, the kind of cost to try to perform that attack is too high. So you can send someone money and be sure that it's going to be in your wallet, and no one can take it back. And kind of along with that is that if you get $50 in your wallet and you go to deposit in the bank, they're never going to look at that and say, hey, this, was traced to drug activity 10 years ago, and we're not going to accept this money. This money's been blacklisted. And so Bitcoin is fungible. Any one Bitcoin is equal to any other Bitcoin. They can all be moved and exchanged, and no one can stop a payment.
Okay.
And so an individual that you try to pay might look at that payment and, try to say, hey, that Bitcoin was involved in a transaction a long time ago, but, the Bitcoins get divided and recombined in kind of different pools. And so, any Bitcoin is as good as any other Bitcoin.
Gotcha. Can you dig a little bit into the mining aspect of it? How do you explain that to people with kind of the halving and mining?
Yeah, that's where it gets a little harder to understand. But what the mining solves for Bitcoin was how to keep this whole system safe when no one entity is in charge of it. So there's no government managing it. There's no CEO somewhere. There's no customer service that's resolving issues. And so kind of like cash, if you mess up your Bitcoin wallet and, you light your wallet on fire, the money's gone. There's no customer service. There's no redos or, someone to complain to.
Right.
And so the miners are the ones that are running the systems and ensuring all the rules are followed. And so I think the mining idea, the naming of that was kind of more after, I think, just gold, and that we've got this large pool of gold in the world, these reserves of gold, but we're always finding more. There's people working to create more, and they're kind of part of the ecosystem of gold. And so the miners are, hundreds or thousands of operators around the world running computers that are running the Bitcoin code, and they all make sure that Bitcoin is following the rules and no one's trying to steal money or break those rules. And if you wanted to try to break the rules, you'd have to get a huge amount of computing power and the individuals running that computing power to agree to break the rules. And the game theory was that if that happens, they're going to destroy the value of Bitcoin itself.
Right.
And since they've invested all this money in the computers and the systems to mine Bitcoin, which they're making a return on, they're just going to destroy their own investment. And so the economic incentives align to keep the node operators honest.
Oh, gotcha. I'd never really thought about that aspect of it. That's super interesting. And then what about the halving? How exactly does that work? I know we have a halving coming up, next year?
Yeah, and so the halving was every 4 years, the number of Bitcoins that miners get per block, which is about every 10 minutes, is halved. So it started at 50 Bitcoins every 10 minutes. And then after the first 4 years, it dropped to 25 and then 12 and a half. And so I think we're even going to the third or fourth halving now. And so that was kind of a distribution curve of Bitcoin to the miners, because when Bitcoin launched, there was 0 Bitcoins in existence.
Right.
And so in the very first block, the first 50 Bitcoin were created. That's called the Genesis block. Those went to Satoshi. And so we started with 50, and then 10 minutes later, there was another 50. And now I think we're at like 17 or 18 million. So I think there's only 3 million-ish left to be mined. Wild. And so if it stayed at 50, it would have mined the 21 million in, just a few years. With the halving, Bitcoin mining won't end for, hundreds of years. I think it's 150 or 200 years.
Okay.
And so basically the thought was, as Bitcoin becomes more valuable, the reward paid to miners would go down in half, but their return on investment would stay the same if the price of Bitcoin was doubling every 4 years.
Got it.
And so the reward in terms of, monetary value could hold steady, even though the number emitted is halved. And that way it keeps that economic incentive to those miners for hundreds of years versus, 20 years or 50 years, while maintaining a cap of 21 million.
Right. And how many of those 21 million do you think are still around? You were talking about how you burn your wallet, the money's gone. How many lost Bitcoin are there out of the 21 million, do you feel? What's your guess?
I mean, there's a few projects that try to estimate and track it, and you're trying to say, hey, if someone hasn't spent Bitcoin in 10 years, does that mean it's probably gone? So you never know. Someone could spend Bitcoin 100 years later after not having moved it. But just based on confirmed cases where people say, hey, these were my Bitcoins, they were lost. It looks like it's probably anywhere from 10 to 30% could just be gone forever. So that 21 million cap could be, really 18 million. And it's, every day that someone loses Bitcoin or a computer crashes without good backups, that number of lost coins goes up, which makes everyone else's coins just a little more valuable.
That's such an interesting. Thank you so much for explaining that for us. I think that really breaks it down in a nice, clear way for people who didn't really understand why Bitcoin was this special thing that the CEO of the largest financial institution just keeps talking about. Now they have a little bit of more background on it. I want to pivot now to talk about you as an entrepreneur, as a multi-company founder, as someone who's received VC funding, as someone who's an advisor to some really cool new startups. I want you to think back 20 years ago when you started your first company. Can you kind of put your mind back in that place? What are some of the lessons that you got from that first year of running the business? We have a lot of people who are starting their businesses right now or thinking about starting businesses, and they really want to learn from experienced entrepreneurs. What are the things that they took out of that first year? So when you look back, what is it that you learned the most of, and what is it that you wish you would have known?
Yeah, I think I touched on this a little bit in the last podcast when I was on with you. And, I think you could look at the first year of Supergenics, when we were starting that and kind of the first real success. But I think a lot of the lessons I learned were in the other startups and smaller things that failed. And I think I had mentioned in the other podcast, I didn't really ever feel like those were failures. Everything was just learning and playing with ideas and just looking for the thing that was going to work. And so I think that's really the mindset that is going to help an entrepreneur that's looking to start. Is you just have to get this mindset of searching for ideas and coming up with something that you could do. And you should have a lot of these ideas. I think it's easy as an entrepreneur, a new entrepreneur, to have one idea and feel really, connected with that idea. And I think the more you have additional ideas, and you need to validate that the ideas are good, and you start to get experience when you start sharing that idea with friends, family, and especially, and more importantly, people that are in the industry or the types of customers that would be for your product, that you start seeing that all ideas are not equal, and you start to really see, hey, this idea had much more interest. And instead of just friends or family saying like, oh, that's cool, that sounds fun, definitely do it. Eventually you'll find ideas where you're talking to someone who's actually an ideal customer, and they're saying, I want to be your first customer. Let me put a down payment on your first unit, or like, let me sign a contract to get on your platform like day one. And it's like, there really are ideas like that where people are trying to buy it from you before you've even created anything. And so you don't have to take your first idea and then just start developing it and spend a year or two trying to create a digital platform or create a physical product, and then you're 2 years in before you're even talking to the customer and everything's wrong, and you've wasted a lot of time. And so great. I think it's just getting that feedback loop and working through the process and being okay moving on from ideas, and waiting until you find that one that not is just an idea that you love, but has good fit with a customer that is excited and asking you for it.
Yeah, I really, really love that advice, because it's talking about not forcing it. We had a guest come on, Ravi Kurani, is a multi-company founder also. And he said, yeah, don't go ask your mom if this is a good idea and if this is something that you should spend the next 2 years working on, because that's not going to give you real truth. Go look for, I love that you said this, go look for who is your potential best customer. Go talk to that person. If they're not interested in buying what your idea is, then you probably shouldn't go look for another idea, because you need to listen to your potential customers. And the other aspect that he said that I really like that you kind of gave a little insight into is that those people, as you're getting their feedback, they're actually going to get excited about your product. And then when you do have your product, they're going to be your first buyers, like you said, and they're potentially going to be the ones that are going to start sharing the news about this cool new thing. Now there's your product validation right there, right? Where you have people excited about it as it comes out and they're sharing the word about it.
I think the reason entrepreneurs don't do that is because it's scary. It's because it does validate or invalidate the idea pretty quickly. And when you've spent time thinking about an idea and it feels exciting, and there just is an energy when you have new ideas where it can seem like there's no flaws with them. You almost don't want to like break that illusion and like ruin that feeling.
Right.
And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs actually avoid it because there's just so many excuses of, hey, it's too early. If I talk to the customer, they're going to be more interested if I have the product in hand, or it's closer to develop. I don't want to burn that bridge talking to them if it's not ready. And so there's just a lot of excuses for putting that off. And it's like, I've seen it before. It's like, if you're not willing to talk to the customer before you have anything, you're probably actually not going to be ready ever to talk to that customer. There's always one more tweak you can make, one more improvement, one more change to your logo or your color scheme to put off that moment of truth of, is the customer going to accept that? And you can really get the same feedback before you've made written a single line of code or manufactured a single unit.
I love that. Yeah, rip the Band-Aid off. And that comes into the fear that you were referencing also, just say like being fearful about getting that feedback. That actually can be kind of your downfall, not taking that early fear, taking that early feedback, because potentially it could also even say, cause you to pivot to where it's like, it was a good idea, but the direction you were heading actually wasn't the right direction. You just needed to, turn a little bit to the left. And that's what the customer actually was looking for. Your idea, put a tweak on it, and that can give you, much more success early on. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And I think just when you have those conversations about your ideas, entrepreneurship is about putting yourself out there, and will people accept your product, and learning to do that quickly. And a lot of times, if it's not a great fit, you'll have great conversations. You'll learn more about, an industry or a certain type of customer. They might even just tell you something that they are struggling with and would love if someone made. They might just give you ideas. Maybe they're a tweak from what you're doing, or maybe it's a completely different idea, but that's just going to, again, help in that idea generation process where you can end up with notebooks of ideas. And, sometimes you come back to ideas or you combine ideas, and eventually, you will find that great idea that customers just connect with.
That's awesome advice. Yeah. I think that a lot of the entrepreneurs that we've had on this podcast, one of the core skills that they had was the courage to really go out and seek advice and wisdom from both their peers, but also from strangers, and saying like, hey, what do you think about this? Where do you think I should go with this? Is this something you would buy? And to take that step, I think really gets you way farther in the journey, way faster. So as an entrepreneur, I think that one of the other things that they've always brought up is, I had one point in my career that was the most painful, the most challenging, the most difficult. Did you ever have a spot where you thought, we might not make it in any of your businesses that you've started?
I think Supergenics was the real, like, hey, this is a real company. We're going to create an LLC. We're going to launch something. And that was pretty fortunate that, we kind of tried to start lean, and the way we launched it, we got good reception. And then we were just kind of trying to keep up with orders and build out the company as fast as we could. And earlier projects, it was fun. I was coding for fun. I was coding to learn. And when those didn't get traffic, I didn't market things too much. It's like, if it got traffic via Google SEO organically, right, then that was fun and exciting. And if I didn't, I didn't really have huge aspirations that they were going to be a great idea that was going to, kind of be my career or a moneymaker. And so I definitely had a lot of failures, but I guess I never really saw them as, something that was, I was fearing that, things were not going to be okay.
Yeah, that's a healthy outlook to have. Was there one decision that you thought, either in your education or in your career, that you think gave you the highest ROI? One skill that you worked on, one decision you made, that you think like, wow, this is what really kind of separated me and got me to the next level of my success?
I think it was just, I sometime in high school just kind of had this vision that at some point I'm going to create some sort of recurring revenue, whether that's investing in real estate or, a little bit later in high school when I was really getting involved in web development and doing small projects for people, where it's just like, at some point I'm going to create something. And I think that just kind of changed my thinking process to always be thinking of ideas and making things and putting things out there and just seeing what happens.
Yeah, getting that passive piece really seems like the golden gem of business. And really down that road, I want to lean into that conversation a little bit more. One of the things that we've talked about over the years that I really like your insight on is planning out how you want your life to be and creating your business to align with that. Can you talk a little bit more about how you did that? I was talking with a friend the other day who's thinking of starting a company that is pretty labor intensive, kind of hard to really not be actively engaged in all the time. And I had brought up that topic with them that you had spoken to me about all those years ago. Can you talk about building that alignment and really thinking about your business, a few years out and how that will match with your life?
Yeah, I think this is, something that entrepreneurs should think about earlier before success, but it's something that they should definitely think about, once you have, a business that is making money. Because I think if you ask most people, if you're making money, hey, would you ever stop or choose to make less money or not to keep making more money? And that would just be kind of a crazy idea. Like, why would you ever not want more money? But I think you have to look at the trade-offs that continuing to build a business and is usually going to continue taking more of your time as the entrepreneur, as the founder, setting that vision and managing people. And so you can definitely try to just replace yourself, but that comes with, cost of a salary, replacing yourself. Are they going to do as good of a job as you're doing? Can they really continue to grow the business? And the answers are usually probably not, unless you're, pretty lucky to find an amazing replacement for yourself. And for me, it's like I knew I wanted to have a good lifestyle. I wanted to be comfortable, but my main goal was to try to create something passive and to try to work as little as possible. And so that starts to affect decisions you're making in the company. What do you outsource? What do you do in-house? How can you make the operations of the business kind of as seamless and easy as possible to keep making money and hopefully more money, but just being able to replace yourself and reduce your hours instead of trying to keep building your income.
I love that. Yeah, I think that had such a positive impact on my life. My prior professional career, I was a hotel manager, and running hotels was very time consuming, and it wasn't something that I was able to just sort of pass off onto people and not take responsibility for. So when you pulled that curtain aside for me and let me see behind the entrepreneurial veil to see that you could have a business, you can set it up to be run in a passive way, it completely changed my life. So I just want to make sure to appropriately validate and voice my appreciation. I'm curious about your current state of Ethereum, though. Did you think that still had promise with anything, or do you think that?
Yeah, I think Ethereum will be around. I think just the decentralized exchanges on Ethereum are a big enough innovation that will be around forever with people exchanging value through DEXs. As other chains have kind of struggled and we've had so many problems with bridging, one of my original concerns is, hey, if you've just got this one closed system, Ethereum, how much value will really be moving between that? And then when new chains come along, it's like, oh, there's actually a lot of coins moving and bridging and value moving around. But as we've had a hard time finding, good stability and security in all of those systems, and looking like things are going to maybe move back to just probably Ethereum and some of its side chains being dominant, I just started feeling a little bit more like I did in the early days of Ethereum of, will there really be new breakthrough financial products, or are we just going to make a decentralized version of lending and exchanges?
Is there going to be anything that's going to come along and just surpass Ethereum? Like, people still talk about Solana or Chainlink or some of these others. Is there anything you think that really could ever overtake that, or it's just got so much built on it already at this point, it's just not able to?
I feel like Ethereum, its kind of development environment is like the de facto standard now. And I think Ethereum or Solana doing its own thing is kind of a pro and a con at the same time. It did give an alternative, but at this point, I'm not really sure what would cause that to suddenly become the dominant chain.
Right.
And, developers learning the new contract programming styles of Solana. And a lot of times when project didn't launch on Solana, it's because they didn't want to reprogram their smart contracts and have all the risk of bugs and things of doing that. But they could relaunch on all the Ethereum compatible chains really easily.
Right.
So I don't see Solana, and then like Chainlink, it's like those are just providing services to Ethereum. I don't know if Chainlink is actually trying to develop their own chain, but I just really see Bitcoin and Ethereum being the dominant players for a while.
It's so wild how there's been hundreds and hundreds of people trying to come up with a superior product to even rival Bitcoin. And it just seems like there's just nothing that has come even close to meeting the initial step forward of innovation that Bitcoin had.
I think Bitcoin got all the pieces right first, and while people are making incremental improvements, it's just Bitcoin has the network effects, Ethereum has the market size, it has the users, and small changes don't seem like they're enough to flip the market cap of one of these big projects.
Is there any new information or news about Satoshi? Was it a person? Was it a group? Is there? What's your feeling on that? Are we ever going to know who that person is or group was?
No, I don't think we're going to know. We haven't, had any communication in so long, and Craig Wright or some of the others that have tried to claim to be Satoshi just, they could easily prove it by showing they have keys to those early wallets and moving some Bitcoin. And so I don't think we're ever going to know. I think the person, it was either an individual and they've passed away, or it was a group and they've just decided to disband and remain anonymous forever.
That's so wild that what is it worth now? What's the market cap of Bitcoin now?
I think we're over at $1 trillion at the top, and now, we're back down around 500 billion.
So wild
for just Bitcoin.
The founder of this $500 billion to $1 trillion concept is just anonymous and unknown. It's just unbelievable to me. It's such a cool thing. I think it makes it even more interesting and like a wild, what is there anything ever in the history of the world that we don't know who created this new tech that changed the world? Is there anything comparable to that?
No, not that I know of. And especially since it's estimated that he probably holds 1.1 million Bitcoin himself, he, would be a very rich individual or group.
Right.
And so it's, those never move. That just kind of gets added to those piles of lost Bitcoin. And, that's 1 million just right there.
So it's estimated that he owns 1%. So that's 1/12 of the total supply.
Yeah. Would that be 1 million out of 21 million?
1 million, 20 million, 121.
Yeah.
0.5. Wow. That's so wild. Unbelievable. All right, Tyler. Well, I just wanted to say once again, your explanations of these super complex topics and making it in a very digestible way, it always provides like really good context and learnings for me. So I appreciate you taking the time to teach all of us today and give us your insight on all these amazing future innovations that are coming towards us.
Yeah, great talking with you, and glad to share my perspective.
Yeah, your story of entrepreneurship and being a multi-company founder, and I know you're a valuable advisor to so many companies now. I can see why everyone would always want to pick your brain. So thank you again for all the insight.